Hello and welcome to episode 167 of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke, who, from the sounds of it, is in the middle of a biblicalized proportional storm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We hope you make it. Lance, how are you?
I've started work on an arc. I hope to have it complete sometime soon.
It sounds like there's a wrecking ball that's being used on the house that Lance is currently in. That's how loud the thunder has been. We'll see if it seems to have stopped right now, but we're hoping you make it. You do realize that Pat Sheridan is already lined up to replace either one of us. So if you don't make it, in terms of like from just a logistical standpoint from the Brass Junkies, the show will go on no problem.
Oh yeah, no, he'll be way better.
Speaking of better than Lance, we wanted to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I would not recommend that you hold your mouthpiece over your head in your yard right now. That would probably be a very bad idea.
I make the news.
We have released out of the archives for the first time since it happened the 2020 Brass Junkies Academy Summer Workshop, where there is 22 hours of classes which are available at a significantly reduced cost. If you go to brassjunkies.academy, you can learn about that. And you will also, if you register, you can pick your instrument, and you will get access to a completely free Inside the Practice Room session from Hitz Academy, featuring for trumpets will be Michael Sachs, for horn will be Jeff Nelson, for trombone will be Weston Sprott, for euphonium is DeMondre Thurman, and for tuba is Pat Sheridan. And those are all deep dives into the process of practicing. They will they show you the way, both mentally and how they actually structure their practicing, how they have turned themselves into some of the best brass players in the world. Speaking of a pretty darn good brass player, we spoke with Charles Villarrubia for this episode. That did. Oh man, he's like quintessential artist who happens to play the tuba for my taste. Like he's an excellent musician and artist, and tuba happens to be his instrument. He's a monster tuba operator, but that has never been the main headline coming out of his bell for me, which is exactly what I look for in all musicians. So I've looked up to him for a really long time. And he's great. He's funny. He's a great teacher. If you've ever seen him give a master class, or I've never taken a lesson from him, but he's wonderful. And this interview was great.
Super fun. Really great.
Yeah. And without further ado, let us get to this conversation that we had with tubist extraordinaire Charles Villarrubia.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content by the Brass Junkies, just click on the like and subscribe button. You'll have an opportunity to see some of the greatest brass players in the world, and Andrew and me.
And today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by one hell of a tuba player, an incredible teacher, and just a quality human. Wouldn't you say, Lance?
Oh, absolutely. He spells quality with a capital K.
We are joined by Charles Villarrubia. Charles, how are you?
I am well, thank you. Longtime fan of the podcast, and appreciate you having me.
We finally got down the list far enough that we were like, let's have Charles.
Hey, I have no pride. I know I'm scraping the bottom here.
No, as you know, you ain't the bottom. You can't even see the bottom from where you are. No, it's crazy how even though we've done a lot of these, we've only, what are we at, 160 something, which means give or take like 30 to 40 per, of the 5 instruments, and which is like not that many. It's like I mentioned to you years ago, like we'd love to have you on the podcast, and you right away were like, yeah, that'd be fun, and then it just like hasn't happened. There's just a lot of people out there doing a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah,
a lot of people.
They
share the love.
Yeah, absolutely. So you teach at UT Austin. You've got like a tuba euphonium machine going down there. Let's start with that. When did you first take over that job?
Well, we moved down here in 2004, and for a while, my wife is the flute professor here, and they kind of brought us in as a duo. But my predecessor here, Steve Bryant, who's a wonderful, wonderful colleague, wonderful human being. He was still teaching tuba, so I took over the brass chamber music program, which I was thrilled to do, my thing. And so we've been here now for 16 years. And eventually Steve retired, and I took over the studio, and here we are.
What's the brass chamber program? You know, each school handles chamber ensembles differently. What's that look like at UT Austin?
Well, you know, at the beginning, Lance, it looked the same as everywhere else. You know, one of the things that has always kind of bothered me a little bit about brass chamber music, or about chamber music in general, is that it always seems to be something of an institutional afterthought. In that, even at BU, when we were there, and when it was just chugging along, it's like, you know, everybody gets their courses scheduled, you know, your private teaching, your work schedule, whatever you're doing. And let's now try to figure out a time where we can meet, try to figure out a time when we can get a coaching, you know. And that to me would, as the teacher, that would always be the most stressful time of the semester, because, you know, I'd get these 5 people in a room, and they're looking at their schedule. Okay, you know, we can meet for a coaching, you know, Sunday night at 11:30 p.m. It's like, no, thank you very much. You know, I have a life here. So, long story short, what eventually I was able to do is find a time in the week, one day a week for 90 minutes, where we have everybody in the same room at the same time. And it's kind of run like a Paris Conservatory type class, where the chamber music program is not a series of individual coachings. Chamber music program is a group class. Now, within that class, I may say, all right, next week I'm meeting with this group and this group only. Everybody else is welcome to attend, but I'm going to work on you individually. But a really remarkable thing happened in a sense that they know that every week they're going to be playing for their colleagues. So number one, there's a little bit of heat, right? It's like, okay, this is something where we have to really prepare for this. Number two, I think they more effectively took ownership of what they were doing in the small group. You know, as you know, you guys know, Rose, you that's what it's about. It's about ownership of that group, that product. You know, we have the responsibility for scheduling your rehearsals, for being prepared, for figuring out what you want to do artistically. Process that in play there. And so what I noticed a couple of years in is that groups started becoming more adventuresome about the artistic choices that they were making, and not relying on that guy to tell us what to do, because that to me was starting to get a little bit bothersome. So this is my version of this piece, not their version of this. And so that is something that I'm really proud about here, that we've been able to put that kind of structure around a chamber music program where it's its own thing.
Well, I feel pretty lucky. Carnegie Mellon does the same thing, whereas the Monday afternoon is blocked out and is dedicated to that. Now, if you decide with your group, we don't do the group thing, but that's the time, because it fits with the PSO folks' schedule.
Sure.
But that time is sacred, and if you don't want to use it, that's fine, but you better work it out with your coach, because your coach has that time free every week.
Yes, right.
Yeah. You know, but it does bring a level of seriousness to it. It's just automatically it's not an additive, like you said. It's in the curriculum.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty good. Now, do the winds and percussion, strings, vocals, is it similar? Is it across the school, or this is because for us, it's not just brass, but brass really has a very organized approach to it. I'll say as politely as possible.
The percussion does their own thing. Saxophone does their own thing. Of course, this saxophone quartet thing. They is ubiquitous. And the winds do something similar. It's there's some slight differences. And the string quartet program has their own thing. We have our string quartet resident group here. So
is it largely, it's like the most obvious place to go for us is always quintets. That's because this is the most repertoire, and it's the most widely known thing. We've all made our living at one point or another as quintet members. So
sure.
I'm assuming that a large portion of those quintets, but then what are the, maybe that's not even true, but then what other sort of strange stepchildren groups get put together out of that?
It is true, and that's something that I try to encourage, is playing in a quintet, because the value of playing with other sounds, I think, is something that it's a skill that people really need to learn. The like instrument groups, which it's fair game. We've had some amazing trombone quartets down here that have won in the international competitions that I've been really, really fortunate to get to work with. And our trombone professor here, Nathaniel Brickens, is fantastic. But there's always a trombone quartet or two or three. Occasionally there's the tuba quartet. If somebody comes here as a master's student in euphonium performance, then they are required to take chamber music. It's in their curriculum, and that's always kind of a tough thing. If there's one euphonium player, it's like, all right, what am I going to do with the euphonium player? Now, we do have a system here where people can audit. You can take chamber music without, having, essentially taking it for credit. So I've been able to massage it in a way that way, so where, we do have some hybrids. I've had a group that was 5 trombones and a drummer, and so they played a lot of stuff like that. I've just had some really. I've had tuba, French horn, and piano, which is a really nice body of repertoire building. Mm-hmm. Whatever people look, if somebody wants to form something that is unique, or that is a little bit off the beaten path, I say go for it, as long as everybody can make the time and the place, and you can be a part of the experience of chamber music, at the school. Then go for it. It doesn't matter to me. To me, it's music. Building certain skills to understand how to play together in a small group. So I'll work with any group like that. But it's been a load of fun. The challenge for me is coming up though in next fall, because the thing that I try to do to keep it perpetually oiled is to have groups formed at the end of the semester, so they know who's going to be playing the next semester.
That's smart.
We've been out of the loop now for, I stepped foot in my office for the first time last week since March of 2020.
Wow.
I had not even gone in my office because there were really strict regulations about how you can get in, et cetera, et cetera. And now
that's the last time that I stepped foot in a college building, and I quit my college job a year ago.
Yeah,
See,
it's amazing.
I never had an office. I didn't have an office for the first however many years I was teaching. I was just like, because my job got duct taped together out of a variety of things. Well, and because there was like 12 or 15 full-time faculty who didn't have offices.
Yeah.
And so I got an office in the middle of January 2020 for the first time.
Wow. Yeah.
I used it for 6 weeks, and then see you later.
Yeah. You got to move.
Nice.
You got to move a plant in there, and that's about it.
That's right. Well, so now you've got to put this. You're going to have to hit the ground running. So, what have you done to reassemble or pre-assemble your groups for the fall?
Well, Not a whole lot is the answer. I know of my students who's taking who will sign up for credit, because that's kind of how we do it. Everybody has to sign up beforehand, but and then get approved. And what we try to do, long story short, is try to get pre-formed groups. So the first day of the semester, these groups are formed. We might have a couple of odds and ends to rearrange, but it has worked really, really well. I don't know who's at the school. I don't know the trumpet studio. I don't know. I know them from the juries last. The Zoom juries. I know of the players now, but it's not the same thing. Mm-mm. So it's going to be really, really challenging, because you have personalities, you have different. You look at that saying, no, I'm not going to put those two together.
Wait a minute, Charles. Are you telling me that personalities matter in a chamber group?
Oh yeah. That's a fun thing, by the way. It's like, inevitably, this group is going to have have this some way, somehow. And I quite frankly, I encourage it. It's like, I've had a lot of students. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't encourage, any animosity or any vitriol, of course. But when a student comes to me and say, we're just not really getting along, and it's like this, that, and the other thing, it's like, okay, here's my first suggestion: work it out.
Yeah.
Now, if upon a couple of meetings you don't feel like you're working it out, I'm happy to come in and give some tools to help you guys work through these things. And we actually work on this in class. We work on how you give commentary to your colleagues, how you receive commentary from your colleagues.
Yes.
Because it's this, you guys know, this is laboratory for the rest of your life. I don't care what you're going to be doing. If you're going to be a band director, if you're going to be, going to accounting, you're going to have to understand how to deal with people. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing little laboratory like that. So I love to see the thought bubbles, over people's head, while people are giving them comments. And I can tell who's a little bit on edge here and there. But that's the fun of being a large fly.
And then what in terms of repertoire? So how do you help them decide, or you pick them, or they pick them, or how's that go?
I will make suggestions. If a group of lower division undergrads comes in and say, "Wait, we want to play the Boza," I might coax them into doing the Ludwig Mauer 3 pieces instead. But I want them to take ownership. There's a large library of repertoire here. One thing that we always do is that I don't care what level the group is, the first couple of weeks are chorales. And we're talking about how to what to listen for. We're talking about what is your role in the group. We're talking about building the sound and fundamentals. It's like, it's so interesting with chamber music. And when you juxtapose it to how people go about their best practice alone, when you go into the practice room, you have a process, you have things that you do to build your skills, to build the fundamentals. So, hopefully someday you can forget about those fundamentals and just concentrate on the message, right?
Yes.
But in chamber music, it doesn't exist that much. You put five people together and say, okay, play together. Well, they don't have the skills. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to start a group, stop a group. They don't know what they're listening for. They don't know how to build those fundamentals as a small group entity that they've been working on for years by themselves in a practice room. So that's some of the stuff that I really enjoy working on. And because if you unlock that, if you instill that in these small groups, then you're unlocking portals down the road into what they're capable.
Oh, that's so wonderful. That's so wonderful. And teaching conflict resolution, or how to give or how to receive comments. That's so vital, because it's like, it's essential. I mean, so much of the music business now is is what I call project based, meaning that yes, there are people who have full-time jobs, well, like both of you do with college teaching, but there's an awful lot of people whose careers look like the current phase of mine, which is that I do 15 things, and some of them I'm in complete control of, some of which I have partners,
Yeah.
others of which other people have control of, and I just am a part of it. But the whole conflict resolution thing is so important, and also it sounds like your class is doing a good job of teaching people what they should be looking for and what they should be looking out for when choosing people to collaborate with, right? Like there could be two people who are both completely professional and who are, who are easy to work with, but who have different skill sets and who, like there might be somebody who I would be like, I would never want to be in a group with someone like that. And Charles, you might say, actually, she and I would work great together, and it's like, it's not a personal thing either. It's not like I don't want to be in a room with that person. It's just like, I wouldn't choose to go down a multi-year path with that person because we don't complement each other that well. But you have to know what you're looking for, which is why most people, if they try to marry the first person they ever date, it doesn't necessarily work out all that well. So,
yeah, I think that's a terrific point. And I think that, when you look at teaching at the collegiate level, that's part of the challenge because, we have these auditions coming up, in January and February for the following fall. And, you get, 10, 12 minutes with a candidate and undergraduate. You have it's like, I'm going to be with this person for the next 4 years. And it's like I'm assessing them on a certain level, how they play and how well honed their fundamentals are. I have no idea who this person is.
right.
And so I think the people who have done it for a while and who really start to make pretty quick assessments of is this the person that's going to be a good match for the studio, not only me but their colleagues in the studio, and the kind of the vibe that we've attempted to build. And it's sometimes you swing and you miss, and sometimes you take a chance and you hit a home run, so it's I suck at baseball, by the way, but I don't know why I used the metaphor, but anyhow,
I was laughing because when you said sometimes you swing and miss, I thought you mean like with Elvis Yang, which he's one of his students who I first met when he was in 6th grade and who I adore like a son. So I thought I would just throw him under the bus.
Man, by the way, I'm looking forward to seeing him in person.
Right? Yeah.
Can you believe it? That's just, the Zoom thing is, I think by and large, a lot of people are really done with it, but, the fact of the matter is, gosh, we actually moved the ball during it. We people made it work. A lot of people figured out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And I was just really, really pleasantly surprised at the fortitude of the students, and it's like they made it work. They were there, they were prepared, they did their thing, they got better, and to the person, I don't think they complained once. Might have complained about some other things, but not about the situation that we're in. They learned to give themselves a break. It's like, I felt isolated this week. I didn't feel like doing anything that included practicing. Can we talk about X, Y, or Z? No problem.
I had a lot of those weeks.
It's been interesting. I'm armchair psychologist or whatever. Look, I wouldn't pretend to be able to solve a real issue. But just to be an ear. Someone.
Well, sometimes that's all they need, just
that's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious if there are any aspects of this crazy experiment that we just went through that might still continue in some aspect of your playing. But before we do that, I wanted to, Andrew, I can't remember if I told you, but Houchin Horns aims to spread the joy of music through providing the highest level of product, services, and resources to the brass playing community. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, they do. You didn't, but I agree.
I totally forgot. They have mouthpieces by Giddings, Greg Black, Pickett, and many more.
So many mouthpieces.
Unique, the Varus brand of products, especially designed by the craftsmen and pro musicians of Houchin Horns. They do repairs and customizations in-house. And before I forget, I just wanted to remind you that if you enter the promo code Junkies11 at online checkout, you'll receive $500 off of your purchase of a new instrument from HouchinHorns.com. Thank you to Houchin Horns for being our newest sponsor. So, Charles, anything? I mean, I know that it's been... I know there's lots of things we look forward to never having to do again. But did you find... Here's an example from... So one of the things I teach is a business of music class. And I can foresee an advantage to having... Some classes, what we do is we talk about basic principles and then we form little businesses. Mm-hmm. And so at some point, I can imagine going to Zoom because it's so easy to throw a concept at them, put them in a breakout room, have them work out a thing in their teams, and then bring them back together. I wouldn't want to do that, and I don't anticipate doing that for even half of the classes. But I could see a half a dozen times, the advantage to doing that. Are there any holdovers that you have considered this? I might be able to do this, or in case of emergency, I could do this, or what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Houchin Horns for giving me time to formulate an answer.
Absolutely.
Lance never gives the person who's being interviewed like the question ahead of time. You must have slipped him, Venmoed him $20 or something. And I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" No, put him on the spot. It's more fun to watch friends sweat than be prepared. It's lame.
I might be able to sound intelligent on this one.
Well, let's pump the brakes on that. But anyway. Yeah.
Well, in terms of the private teaching arena, I've referred to that the business class thing is that's amazing. That breakout room thing is really, I use it a couple of times in our studio class, and I can see that being a real powerful tool in what you're doing with the music business classes. In terms of private teaching, I think a lot of people had a couple of ideas when this thing first hit, when everything went online. First of all, a lot of people were saying, "All right, hey, I'm going to give assignments. You have to read this and write a paper." And I started talking to these students, and I'm way more busy now than I was before because everybody's giving me these assignments, and it's all right, well, yeah, okay, that's probably not a good idea for me to pile on that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, what I started thinking is that one of the things that I always find in studio teaching is that when you have motivated students, when you have students who want to do X, Y, or Z, is that they have auditions, they have competitions, they have school recordings they're making for graduate school, perhaps. There are a litany of things that they want to be involved with, that they choose to be involved with. And so when you have that dynamic, it's really hard sometimes to give that much time to the things that as a teacher I think we should be giving time to. Let's not do that festival audition. Let's instead work on basics. Let's work on fundamentals. Get your Tyrell book out or whatever, and let's work on making this consistent. Whatever, just an example. So the benefit of what it did for me, and one of the things that I will keep in place is the value of slowing down, the value of working slowly to achieve a greater end. And I think the students understand that too now. They understand. No, we're gonna hit fundamentals for a little bit consistently than you thought you might. Particularly with undergraduates, master's programs, 2 years. You don't, you got to hit the ground running in that. And you got to get in the repertoire and whatever excerpts or whatever you're working on for what you do. But still, there's this idea of let's slow down the process a little bit. So to me, that was my biggest takeaway in what we've been able to accomplish in having students be aware that the vehicle to get to their end game requires a little bit more.
That's a gift. I mean, that's really a gift that you gave them.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. I want to switch gears with you. You mentioned it before, but when you were a student at Boston University, it was a culture, and just like the amount of players that were there, and the brass scene in Boston. It's hard to explain to somebody that didn't experience it. But can you talk to us about experiencing that and what it's meant to your career and your life?
Oh, I think about this a lot, Andy, and that experience at Boston University, and just kind of reflecting back on it. I was talking about, it was chamber music being an afterthought and everything. No, it was structurally, institutionally, it was absolutely the culture at BU. And you had these groups coming out of there. Atlantic Brass Quintet, and I was Jeff Connor and I were in school together. At BU, doing our masters there. So the genesis of a lot of really, really great groups came out of that culture, and then. In addition, you had professional groups in the city playing all the time. Kind of general business work. That groups that were working a lot. So you had this thing. It's like this viable entity, this way of quilting. My wife calls it quilting together a career, which you were talking about before about this. You take not everybody's going to do that one institutional thing.
Right.
Some of the most satisfied and happy musicians I know, the people that piece together a wonderful career with a lot of different things. Playing in a small group is part of it, and a lot of people did that in Boston. Oh. And it would be a war to find space to rehearse, and the dancers just could not stand us because we'd go into those beautiful dance studios that had all that wood all over the place.
Oh,
and man, it
good.
just sounded great.
Yeah.
And they would come in and they would like, somebody didn't wipe their spit off of the floor, and I can see where you might be bent out of shape by that. Folks, can we please clean up our the water that comes out of our instruments? But it was this rite of passage where you kind of jockeyed for getting in a place to rehearse, and it was vital. It was it was alive, and we would there would be groups that sometimes that would kind of hide in the basement of 855 Commonwealth Avenue, and wait for the guard to come check and make sure everybody was out of the building, and then when the guard would shut everything off, we knew where to go and to rehearse, and it's just this crazy atmosphere. And then you had the performance classes, with Empire Brass, we would play in that little art gallery that was in that building. And I remember I played in a quintet with Rodney Marsalis, and Kurt Dupuis, who's soloist with the Marine Corps band. And
that's a pretty good trumpet section.
We were, we had the best time. And then, your Sam and Rolf would be sitting in the first row there, just kind of looking at everybody in the group and making everybody nervous. And you'd have these coachings, at odd hours, but it was electrifying, And then you'd have the open rehearsals with Empire Brass, and then heard that electrifying sound that group could make. And it's hard to describe. You try to put it into words, you try to put the culture into words, you try to put that sound into words, and you can't really hear it on recordings. You have to bear witness to being in front of that group when it bumped you in the chest. So it was for me, coming from Louisiana, it was just eye opening. It was like, oh, for anything like that.
You got
So,
dropped right in the middle of it.
oh yeah, yes I did. Yeah, and the New England Conservatory was a great school, and that was a place where most of the symphony players taught. But BU was the place that where the brass chamber music, absolutely, firing on all cylinders.
How did the performance classes work with Empire? Did they give you comments like during class or afterwards? To talk us through what that looked like.
My recollection of that is it was a concert more than anything, and there would be some commentary at the end,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a chance for everybody to get up, bow, play, leave. Next group come. Rinse. Wash, rinse, repeat. And at the time there'd be probably 7, 8, 9 different groups playing. All brass quintets. And it ran the gamut, but it was a kind of a I almost hesitate to use the word competition, but it was kind of this healthy, thing. All right, let's that group's really sounded good. Let's kind of step up our game or whatever. But the commentaries were more generally based at the end of class.
Cool. I want to talk to you about studying with Sam a little bit, but first, Lance is going to tell us about the beautiful people and Jim Nova at the Mary Pappard School of Music.
There are a number of beautiful people at the Mary Pappard School of Music. As you correctly pointed out, Jim Nova is not among them. I mean, he's not going to stop traffic, but it's anyway. So the Mary Pappard School of Music at Duquesne University is a fantastic organization, long-standing sponsor of the show. If you're interested in studying music at the university level, either for undergrad or for masters, please click on the link in the show notes, and you can find out all the folks you can study with and the groups you can play with. And actually, I think I saw a posting. I think James Gourlay is taken over as conductor of the wind ensemble or something to that effect.
I believe
So that's pretty cool. So come on, there you go.
There you go.
So please click on the link so that they can know that their efforts to sponsor our show are not wasted. And a very, very, very special thanks to Jim Doesn't Stop Traffic Nova for making it possible.
To be clear, I was not making fun of Jim's appearance. That would be tacky. I was saying that he's not a beautiful person on the inside.
Oh, on the inside. Oh. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I wanted to set the record straight there. So
very special thanks to Jim Ugly on the Inside Nova for making that possible.
Ooh, he got 2 nicknames this week.
There you
That's pretty good.
Cheaper.
Yeah, we should charge them extra for this week. So Charles, I know. Well, one thing I want to plug, which is on our YouTube channel and which will be posted in the links here. But we did a tribute to Sam Palafian back in October, near what would have been his 70th birthday. And you were one of many people. It's like this all-star cast of people who joined us. It was wonderful. But you were one of the people that joined us, because I know that your relationship with him he was very important to you as a musician, obviously, performer, teacher, and just person. And I wanted to give you an opportunity, because I never tire of having people say wonderful things about Sam. Just give you the floor to talk a little bit about what it was like to work with Sam when you got to Boston.
Well, wow. Was very important and continues to be very important. And I think, when you think of the best teachers, that's a trait that you will find, that even when your work with them stops, or in this sense, Sam's untimely passing, you still learn from them. You still conjure up the lessons that you learn from them. And it's not just tuba playing with Sam. To me, that's the most amazing thing, is that you can learn anything you want in terms of just listening to him play. Extraordinary. I've never figured out. I've never met anybody who figured out the tuba like Sam. It was just extraordinary. And any tuba, he'd play it for a while, and he'd understand it, or a mouthpiece or whatever, But the I view Sam's teaching as a long game. If you were willing, if you were listening to what he was saying, if you were watching how he conducted himself professionally, then you were learning much bigger lessons about how to be a professional.
Mm.
And it so transcended playing the tuba. It's so transcended playing in a small group. Or Sam could teach orchestra excerpts as good as anybody. He understood that language. He understood all of these languages. He understood the language of being a recording engineer, a producer, businessman. He was whatever he chose to immerse himself in. He made the decision to not do it halfway, to go in with both feet. And I think there were some people who were there for the tuba lessons to try to figure out how to be a better player. That's totally fine. I figured out at a certain point with Sam that it's like, this is something special being here, because if I stay in this business, I'm going to learn about the business and how to conduct myself for the entirety of my life. Not just how to play with a certain sound or how to rhythm and the nature of the sound that you're. So, to me, that I will be eternally grateful for Thor. On the tributes to Sam that I was listening to and reading, one thing kept coming up with amazing frequency is that, you didn't have to talk to Sam all the time to feel like, you never left. There were periods of time where I didn't talk to Sam, and for a long time. And then you pick up the phone and give him a call. Hey, how you doing? And it was like you never spent any time apart.
Yeah.
And that was a commonality in the themes. And he for somebody to invest that much of themselves in that many people over that period of time, that's extraordinary energy. Extraordinary. And I can't imagine having that kind of energy as a
He was still doing that when he was dying of cancer.
Yeah,
still the
yeah,
same
of
way.
course, yeah. I listened to the, to the session where he was on this podcast, and it was, it was hard to listen to sometimes, because what he was going through and his realization of what he was going through, and being very honest but he was always there for people. He was always thinking of what he could do to make you better, to make the business better, to make more opportunity. And I think people who never met him, never worked with him, still owe him a debt of gratitude for what.
I was struck by how many people on Facebook and other social media platforms posted about how they met him once and about how he changed their lives fundamentally.
Right.
Sometimes it was like I played in a master class that he was in, and the advice he, like that's a gift. Like anybody can get up and make somebody. If you've been doing this long enough, you can make someone play better in 10 minutes. That's not really that hard. But to have somebody, when you pass away, like 15, 20 years later, say those 10 minutes and the other, hour and a half that I sat there listening, like changed the trajectory of my life. That's not as easy. You can't put that into a book, or else someone would have written that book. It's like, and it would be they'd be a multimillionaire. You can't teach that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Andy, and that was my experience. The first time I heard Empire Brass play, I had heard of them. I don't even think I even listened to an LP. Remember that at the time. But they came through. They were on tour, and they stopped at Louisiana State, where I was a student. I think I was a sophomore. And I was playing in a brass quintet. We were playing the Boza, the aforementioned Boza, and they came in and they played. They did their thing where they played probably 20-minute, 25-minute concert, and then they coached our group. And then we had a crawfish boil. But that 25-minute concert changed everything about what I understood to be the possibilities of being a tuba player and a musician. It just flat out, for hearing the group, first of all, and then after a while, you just start listening to that tuba players. I'm this hayseed from from the deep south. I don't know much about nothing. I can play the tuba okay, but I know there's something special going on here. I mean, this guy is navigating this whole group. I mean, he is just driving everything that this group does. And he might not be wearing the white captain's uniform on the top deck of the ship here, but everything that this group is about is coming from that tuba player. And so after that, I put one school on my hit list for graduate school. It was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, but that was what I did. And I got in.
Wow. Jeez. That's really funny that you're like, nope, I'm going here or nowhere.
Yep. That's it. That's it. I knew I needed to be, that there was something going on there that I needed to tap into. I knew the realities of playing in a symphony orchestra, and that's what I knew to be available at a time, that or military band. And and I was happy to start carving out that path. And then I kind of bore witness to this remarkable thing happening. It was remarkable. And for those people who got to hear it up close and live, something that sticks with you. Of course, everything else that defines Palafian. The mentorship.
So let's put the teacher cap back on your head and talk about, up until that point you said, there was the orchestral route or the military band route, that kind of concept, and now you add this career field that each of us dipped our toes into for a while. You have students now who come at you, and none of the available choices are that interesting to them. How do you guide that student?
Well, that's the question. It's the question about what you do in the business today. It's always, look, with the arts, and let's take music in general. It always seems to be the dire state of affairs. Well, it's like funding for the arts and this, and it's the world is on fire and it's about to collapse. It's always been like that since I've been in the business. Always. Mm-hmm. Yet somehow, post-COVID, we'll see. That was a different shock to the system. But somehow it's kind of never been more exciting to be a musician, with the various creative outlets, that people have found, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's on social media. Face it, you have a computer and a microphone, you have a home studio now. You can do things. So I think there are a lot of, for those who are creative, for those who are thinking about, for those who choose to take blinders off instead of putting them on. When I'm talking to a graduate school student about the possibility of coming to school here, one of the first things I ask, what else do you do? I know you play the tuba, the euphonium really well, but do you have any other areas that you have an interest in?
It's a great question.
And some people might say, well, my undergraduate is in music education. Great, yes, awesome. Dan Parentone's always been an advocate. And it's not as a fallback, not as something to do, but you'll be miserable doing it. No, something that you can see as a viable path in your life. If I ask people, undergraduates who are on the fence, should I do this? Should I do that? I just ask them, is there a part of you that could see yourself being happy as a teacher, as a band director? And if they say yes, I say you get that education degree. I won't teach you any differently than if you were a performance major. It's not like, oh, you're going to be in that club. No, that's just. And if the answer is a hard no, okay, let's figure out some other things. Do you have an athletic band background? Do you have a drum corps background? Do you enjoy music theory? Do you enjoy music history? And to be able to without spreading, the proverb, without being a mile wide and an inch deep, be able to immerse yourself in different parts of the musical landscape to be more viable. I've had a lot of students come through who absolutely love athletic bands, who did the drum corps thing, who were in their college marching bands. Instead of getting a master's degree in euphonium performance, why don't you go get a conducting degree? There are opportunities that have come up for low brass teacher and conductor of the athletic bands. Right. It's a thing. So whatever you can do to make yourself more viable, or just be the idea of being creative. I have one student who was in music education, performance, euphonium player in music education. Here at University of Texas, we call it music studies, because the state legislature doesn't want us to use the word education in a degree program other than the School of Education. So, welcome to Texas. Anyhow, he came to me in a lesson once, and he was good. He was making good progress, and I'm a big believer that the lessons that we have for students who are going to be teachers will be the most formative part of their musical career as educators, combined with what they're learning from the conductors. But he said, I'm looking for something else, and I said, I like writing these little ditties, little tunes. I said, so you have some sort of a passing interest in composition. I said, so let's nurture that a little bit. Well, next week, just bring in a little ditty, So it's just write out. So he did more than that. He started sketching out something for tuba and piano. And so I've premiered a number of his works now. He's written a couple of really, really good tuba euphonium quartet pieces, some really good solo works, and he's a high school band director now in the Austin area, and he's a really, really fine composer who's getting his stuff played, and that's not me, by the way. I'm not saying that to say that, but for just a word from a teacher, I think, Lance, as you're alluding to, how do you help foster that? It's just an encouraging word. Hey, let's look at this together. We can put off Roshu for 15 minutes in a lesson. We can work on this idea that you have an interest in. And for him, it was just he hit the ground running, and he's doing beautifully at it.
One of my gigs at CMU is I'm the advisor for the freshman class in the School of Music.
Yeah.
And I sit down and talk with them for a while, and usually what happens is around the 20-minute mark in a conversation, then not always, but often, I get them talking, and then some really interesting idea comes out of their pie hole that they didn't think they had permission to say out loud to an adult. And so the way I've always described it is when your kids are little and they play on the playground and they wipe out and they look at you to see if they're hurt. And if you're like, you're fine, then they're fine and they go back to doing what they're doing. But if they turn around and you're like, then they start screaming because they think I must be hurt. And so just to have somebody who looks them in the eye and go, yeah, why not you? Why not? I mean, if you're interested in writing, then go write. And then you don't get better at it. You know, we've talked, J.D. Shaw's a dear friend of ours, and he's, his band director encouraged him to write. And the first things that he wrote, he'll tell you right out of the gate, were just horrible. But you get the horrible ones out, and then you get better, and you just sort of fail forward.
Yeah, there's this idea of the right or the wrong. That I have to do it this way. This monolithic way of teaching, and to me, I've been the antithesis of that. It's like, what is this person all about? What are they interested in? What do they bring to the table? Yes, if you're playing military band auditions, you have to keep a steady tempo and play, with this kind of you have to do certain things. Right. Let's, get that out of the way. Yeah. But that asking for permission thing, I think that's, they didn't know it was okay to do it. To me, that says it all. Yeah. Like, of course, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. What do you want to do? Yeah. You want to have a kazoo ensemble? It's fine. Whatever. Can you play? Great. Whatever. So I think that's one of the transformative things about the way people are thinking about music now. That is less industrial and less dogmatic, we'll say, or open for I want to create. What do I want to do? That's different, not for the sake of just being different, just because I'm interested in.
Yes, there's an authenticity that comes from it when it's something that you're passionate about. Unsolicited advice for anybody who is young and who is like looking to go to college or to graduate school or undergrad, whatever. Like, look for teachers like you're hearing Lance and Charles talk right now. Notice neither one of them is saying like not to practice orchestral excerpts or to not enter the Falcone competition or to not go for military band auditions or orchestral. None of that. It's just like why there's like there used to be a practically spoken rule that like that was not it was improper to do anything other than that. And there are a lot of teachers, and some of them, if you actually accuse them of this, they would get very mad because they don't even realize that they're doing it. But a lot of people that kind of act as if there's like, that path doesn't need any explaining, but anything that's off to the side needs to be justified in some way. And I would just encourage you, if you're not like fit right inside of the box that's traditional, to look for a teacher who is talking about things, and also who has a career output that backs it up as well in a lot of ways, or a teaching output that backs it up in a lot of ways, because they are out there. You just have to, there's a decent chance that the college right down the street from you that has like a good studio, there's a decent chance that the teacher might only be like an inside the box type of a teacher. If that's right for you, awesome. But if it's not, just go in with your eyes wide open to the process. And rant.
Yeah, no, well, and I remember, Andy, it was my first ever tuba conference that I went to. It was at the University of Maryland, and there was everybody, this big group discussion, everybody in the room at the same time, and I can't remember the nature of the discussion, but I remember vividly a well-known professional tuba player, stood up and got the mic and said, because I know what the discussion was. It was about creating opportunities. It was about expanding kind of things. Let's never forget, that the tuba is principally an orchestral instrument. And I heard that, and even look, I was 19, and utterly unsophisticated as a musician. I could play the tuba. But everything else I was a neophyte. And I remember hearing that and thinking, I'm going to question that. I'm that
Good for you.
that doesn't seem that something about that doesn't seem quite right. And it's that thing about, as you said, this doesn't need an explanation. Everything else you need to kind of create a justification for it in a certain way. No, not the case.
Yeah.
I think the walls on that kind of thinking have been blown apart, and
Yeah, they have. Although some people haven't noticed yet. They're still at the same mic,
That's true.
talking into the mic with just as much, like courage and what's the word I'm looking for? Not fortitude, but just like confidence as they did before. But they just haven't noticed that the walls have been knocked down, and if your thing is just orchestra, awesome. Like, great, they do that. Like, you also don't need to justify that, right? Like, different is not better. It's just like the only thing that you cannot outsource is your definition of success for your career. Because I don't care if you get a panel of Charles and Lance and Joanna Hersey. Get 10 really, really intelligent people with lots of experience that are empathetic. All of that. They still can't define what success means for you like half as well as you can for yourself. So you got to do it, but you got to be given the green light to do that yourself.
I love to hear you say that and broadcast on the airwaves, because that's one of the pieces, a standard piece of advice that I routinely give to every student. I said, be careful. So you make sure you start to think about what success looks like for you, because if you don't define what it looks like for you, one thing you can count on is somebody else defining it.
Oh, that's so well put. I haven't heard it put like that. That's a fine point on it. Yes, society, and it's really hard. Your parents are going to have an idea. Your teacher's going to have an idea. Your friends are going to have an idea. Your older brother, there's a lot of things that are going to have pull, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have pull, but it's best when my eyes are wide open, when I realize that I'm kind of veering this way because I feel like maybe Facebook is going to celebrate me more if I go this way. It's like, well, actually, I want to go this way, because the dopamine hits of social media are awesome. It's but there's so many ways you can get pulled. And so, if you're young, you get to draw your own map, and anybody that tells you otherwise, they're wrong. So,
well, it's the age-old fixed mentality versus growth mentality. The person who stood up and said that, it's like, you're not coming for my job, and there's only going to be X number of tuba jobs ever, and these are the approved tuba jobs, and the rest of you, thank you very much for paying your admission to this thing. Get in line.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, except I don't want that gig. It just. Then what do you do about Howard Johnson? What do you do about Sam Palafian? What do you do about, just like the list goes on and on and on and on. The people who don't fit that paradigm.
Yeah. So many people don't fit that paradigm. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been awesome, Charles. We could keep going with you for a long time. And in fact, we are going to keep going with you briefly in the bonus episode here coming up.
Bonus? Wow.
Yeah,
what?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How often do we do that?
See, I get time and a half for that, right?
That's right. Yes. We'll double what we were going to pay you.
I was going to say triple, but that.
Okay, fine. No, it's in the budget.
Lance is the money guy for Petaluma Media, so I make big promises, and then Lance is the bad guy who comes in and is like, we can't actually afford to pay you when Andrew said we could. But I'm quite positive we can pay you triple what we were going to. So,
excellent.
But that is if you want to listen to Charles and Sam Palafian, who's already been mentioned, and a host of other people. There are dozens of bonus episodes available to anyone who becomes a Patreon patron. You can just go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, and we also do a whole lot of monthly content as well. And so there's a lot of stuff available there, but you can learn more about that there. And Charles, this has been awesome. I love your approach to everything, and you're a monster musician, but I just also like just how you kind of view the world, and your role in it seems to jive with what I try to put out in the world. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I really enjoy this conversation, and I just please you guys keep doing what you're doing.
He didn't say it, Lance, but he's honored to be on the podcast, so I can feel it. I can feel it.
Yeah. I don't say it either.
All right. So, stay tuned, Charles, for the bonus episode, and that is going to do it for this episode of The Brass Junkies. How about that, Lance?
A good one. Another, I mean, it's really fun. I hope that people like getting the deep dives into, we talk so much about the pedagogy part and how to curate a studio and all that stuff, and I hope it's interesting to people. I just find that fascinating. It's like such an important, the studio curation thing is pivotal. You could, you really screw things up.
And I don't have a college studio right now, but I still found it really interesting because it's like it's about human stuff. I mean, and I personally, I mean, and we've talked about this. This isn't accidental, but there's like lots of places on the internet to hear people talking about all of the predictable stuff. Like there's just lots of places. Yeah. It's not like suddenly like, oh wow, we finally get to hear Charles Villarrubia talk. It's like there's lots of places that you can hear that. And we like talking to people. We didn't plan to go deep on the pedagogy thing, and we also went like super deep on the on the BU thing, which was like which is cool. But yeah, that's why I fancy these. I fancy you, first of all, Lance.
Hey, fancy.
But I fancy these. These are conversations. It's like this is exactly what it would be like if you, me, and Charles were hanging out at the Great American Brass Band Festival. And just the three of us had ended up at a table at the bar at the after hang, and we might talk about some less useful stuff too. But it's like we could totally do a deep dive into the whole BU experience and all the people that were there. That's the kind of thing where I wouldn't be like, so how many years were you in rhythm and brass? And like what was the, like that's just not what we would chat about. So that's kind of our angle.
It's funny that you said the Great American Brass Band Festival because that's where I actually met him. When I was with Brass Band Battle Creek and Rhythm and Brass were playing, we were all staying in the same motel.
Do you know when I met him?
At birth?
I think so. My parents bought a tuba from him for me, the one that's right there, the Rudy Meinl, that Sam owned before him, if I understand correctly. But I didn't meet him then. When that tuba got delivered, actually no, I did meet him then. I met him very briefly in 1991, I believe, which is when this thing got purchased. So, and I do remember. I'm getting my signals mixed. It was a long time ago when I met him, and I was quite young. I do actually remember because it's got a cut bell that Sam is the one that cut the bell, so it's got a screw bell, so you can't put it on the bell because you just don't want to like stress out those the screws. And I remember I was talking to him on the phone, so I definitely did not meet him when the tuba changed hands because I was talking to him on the phone, and he was very nice. I had not yet turned 15. And, I was asking him about stuff he said to not put it on the bell. And I was like, great. And then like I hung up and then I was like, does he mean like not store it on the bell? Or does he mean like literally not put it on the bell? So I called him right back. He was super, super nice. He was like, no. He's like, I wouldn't put it on the bell at all. I was like, cool. Thank you for the clarification. He said, no problem. So, so yeah, he was really nice. And that tuba's unbelievable. It's like, yeah, killer.
Here's an idea that somebody should do. You know what somebody should do? This is actually a good idea. Somebody should create probably a website or like a wiki page which talks about that period of time in Boston and how Empire spawned, like what all the groups and all the people who went on to be pros, like what was going on at Tanglewood, what was going on with that quintet seminar and with that band, and then all the ways that paid its way out. Because that's a thing that's come probably because we know a limited number of humans, but also, but so many stories end up having a point at which that time and place are in it, which is just such a vital time for brass quintet, certainly in the United States, but probably beyond, just in terms of all the stuff that happened there. So that's what somebody should do.
At the same, I'd flip out.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, that was
with discography. Link it out to Spotify and
Oh,
and then
yeah.
sheet music. You could actually probably turn it into a little bit of bread through. I mean, it'd be a little bit of bread, but if you did, hosted playlists and then make a place that you could, do affiliate to buy all the sheet music and all. It's just like it could go. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
I've
yeah,
had worse ideas.
And there's so many, even like tangential people who were, like directly related, like Gould, for example, that we heard about in the Sachs interview. And there's a lot of people from New York. Mel Broyles used to come up every single year to BUTI at Tanglewood to like read charts with all the high school kids. I did that a number of years. That whole ecosystem, it was just like this force. And boy, when Empire Brass used to play their recitals at BU, it was like a rock concert. I mean, when it was shortly after the Sci Center, which is still a venue at BU, opened like about 30 years ago, and it was crazy. It was crazy. There were just there were people. It was awesome. Yeah, just electric. Yeah, really, really, really good stuff.
Pretty incredible.
So somebody needs to do that, and it was great. I really loved his words on Sam. I mean, predictably, and Sam meant enough to him that if we asked him 20 times to talk about his relationship with Sam, it would be different every time. Just there's so many words in there that could come out that the same ones ain't gonna come out every time.
Exactly.
It was that was good stuff. So.
I'm trying to find a thing because I can't remember where to send people. But I had Paul Chadbourne do a set of valve caps for me. This is like our first unboxing video, Andrew. Oh,
except that you already opened the box.
I know, but I haven't looked at it. So I just okay. So that's what it comes in. Pretty fancy. Oh, there you go. Paul's custom brass work.
Hey.
Nice. And then, ooh, look at this. It's fancy. Let's all look together, shall we? Whoops.
It's raining.
I got a sticker.
Oh, I thought it was raining valve caps.
Hallelujah. It's raining. Oh, these are cool. He asked me what color, and I said that I like purple and green.
Nice.
So these are, there's one of them there.
That's awesome.
They're very cool. So he asked me what instrument, what specific instrument I played, and he sourced the caps and then made these inserts for them. He does all kind of cool custom stuff. So thank you, Paul. Very, very happy to have these.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
Unless Lance forgets. But
I'll forget. I'll try right now.
He's going to do it right now. That's why I said that.
See?
Good stuff. Thank you, Charles, if you're still listening. The other thing was how they set up the chamber music class, which was
so cool.
Which is exactly based on not that all original ideas. I'm sure that the Empire, that they based it on other things too. But that's exactly how the Empire Brass Seminar at Tanglewood was set up, and the same way that it was set up at BU when he was a student, which is the whole performance class. Where it's a performance, but the faculty is there, Rolf and Sam sitting in the front row, and then you get the comments, and I loved that, he talked about encourages accountability and independent artistic decisions when you have to perform regularly for your peers. That's really powerful because there used to be weekly classes. And so it was like every week you'd get up there and everybody played every week. So it was like a little bit of real life. It wasn't like, hey, sign up for chamber music class and you're going to prepare 15 minutes worth of music and you'll play it at the end of the semester. The only place that kind of a schedule exists is either in community band or in academia. That's it. Right. And that's not a shot at community bands at all. That's the only place that happens. You don't you just don't get even recital music. Like, you don't rehearse it for 2 months and then play it generally, unless it's some like insanely heavy lifting, but then it would be a hell of a lot more than 15 minutes worth of music. So
true.
Yeah. Really good stuff. You learn by doing. That's how you don't learn by performing, by listening to people like you and I who have performed a lot. We could tell you a lot about performing, a lot of mistakes we made, give you some advice on how to skip some of the mistakes we've made. But no, you learn how to ride a bike by riding a damn bike. That's just kind of what you do. but sadly,
Well, that explains that.
a lot of places don't teach it that way, which is truly mystifying since the name of the degree is music performance, and then there's not that much performing. So, yikes. All right, that's the shortest version of that rant possible, even though it was 3 minutes. So, thank you, everybody, for listening. The bonus episode with Charles was also great. We got some good Dallas brass,
very funny stories.
Yep, rhythm and brass, and Boston brass road stories. A time when Lance was judging a competition and completely lost all composure. And the tale of a scale for the ages. So yeah, be sure to check that out at patreon.com/thebrassjunkies. And thank you for listening. And that is going to do it. Oh, it's not.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We got a new YouTube channel. Did you?
No.
Just in case. Do it again.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, we're putting out a lot of stuff there, actually.
Yeah.
So there's like some live stuff that's going up there that's streaming, some shorter videos that are being taken out of the longer episodes, the full episodes. There's like, we're changing the world. I mean,
man.
really.
Just,
it's like it's super important what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's really important. Sometimes I have trouble sleeping at night just because the weight of the importance of what we're doing with this, the Brass Junkies is just, it weighs on me. The weight weighs on me. And that is going to do it for another incredibly important episode of the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to the Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray4Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/Pray4Jens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.